I still own the climbing wall, so I'm involved in it a little bit. I've got properties, I've got businesses, so I'm busy. I'm busy doing stuff like that. Got a couple of dogs. I've taken the dogs for a walk. I'm still quite involved in climbing. I watch the stuff. I climb. If I do climb, I climb on artificial walls. I've over to Austria probably 4 times a year and go to the Innsbruck wall. So I see a lot of the top climbers still. I'm still quite involved in it.
It sounds like you're probably climbing a bit less than
Yeah,
your heyday.
Yeah. I stopped climbing when I was 40. So in my mind, I don't climb anymore. So when I was 40, I stopped climbing, and that was the end of my professional career. And I've reached a point where I've achieved all the goals I wanted to achieve. I didn't really want, at 40 years old, it's quite hard to be a professional climber, to keep going to your sponsors. Will you sponsor me again? I'm making this and that. I've got some ideas for this. I didn't want to rely on other people for a wage. So I wanted to make my own way and make my own money and not have to rely on other people to sponsor me. So I stopped when I was 40. I had 2 children. I got married. I wanted to focus on my marriage and my children and making my own money. And I wanted to do, I didn't want to have my only one life just as being a climber. I wanted to be able to do other things. And when you're climbing, you just can't do anything else. You can't, because it's not good for your climbing, to do a lot of other things. So I've always loved surfing. So I thought, I've had to go surfing and be free and be able to do what I wanted to do. So I packed in, 21 years ago.
Jerry, not only were your climbing accomplishments so ahead of its era, so unique in what you were able to achieve, the way you were able to push the standards, the grades, but I also sense an approach to climbing, which is perhaps a little bit different than other climbers, and then maybe even other outdoor athletes. I speak to many on the show, and a lot of people talk about this lifelong love of the sport, where even if one is not able to continue climbing or surfing or running or what have you at a certain level, they want to keep doing it because of what they get out of that experience. You planned your life very differently, where it seems like you pushed really, really hard. You achieved all your goals. And then when the time came, you literally, took off your shoes and tossed them in a bucket and kind of said goodbye. And I get it. Like, you are in some ways a lifer. I mean, you love the sport. You continue doing some indoor climbing. You have business interests. But on a personal level, it sounds like you walked away. And I'm curious.
Oh yes, it's a little bit. It's a little bit like being a professional footballer, playing for a top team, playing for your country, and then you get to 35, and you're not in the Premiership anymore, and you're not going to play for England ever again, or the Bundesliga, playing for Germany. You're right there. You're not going to get a professional footballer who's played for Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga and played for Germany and won the World Cup, who's going to be playing football when he's 45. It's not going to happen. Who are they going to play? They're not going to play in a park. You might go to America and play till you're 40. So people always thinking climbing, it's a little strange that you don't climb after a certain point. I think for me, it's more the opposite. Why would I want to climb when I'm 45 and not climb as good as I was? I want to be the best, and I want to achieve new things. And from when I was 18, I was doing new routes in England that nobody else could do, almost up till I was 40. There's no way I want to just go out and plod along when I'm 50. I enjoy climbing, but I don't think of it as climbing as it was when I was climbing. If I go climbing now, I climb indoors or I might go outside, but I enjoy having a coffee and talking to my mates about climbing. I might kill that climb for an hour before I climb, and then I might do a few easy climbs, but I still love climbing, but I ain't so bothered about the climbing. But I'm really interested in climbing. And
Yeah.
would I love to watch one of the top climbers do a route on rock? Absolutely. It'd be the highlight of my year. I've seen Adam Ondra and Migos climbing on rock. It doesn't do so much for me watching people on climbing artificial, but to see somebody do a, state-of-the-art route, it's like somebody winning the 100 meters in the Olympics. It's a highlight and love it. So I still love climbing, but do I want to train really hard and stretch every day and diet and stuff? Not at all. I've done that as a big part of my life that's gone. But do I still love climbing? Yes, I do. And it's, there's no sport I would rather watch more at the very highest level than climbing. So, it still does a lot for me.
Agree wholeheartedly that, once you're a climber, I feel you kind of stay a climber because you get these experiences out of it, whatever level you're climbing at. But I am fascinated by your, let's say, contrasting perspective on engagement with the sport, because in many ways, I also agree that the returns on investment, they dwindle.
Yeah.
I'm 46.
Yeah.
And what I could do, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, it does not feel the same.
Yeah.
It feels like there's just that much more. Yeah, there's just so much more work I have to put in to be able to just maintain that, forget exceeding that.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's switch a little bit and maybe go back to your beginnings a little bit. You discovered climbing, Jerry, and for a long period of your life, you were completely dedicated. May I even say obsessed to the point of perfection? Can you think back to perhaps a moment or an experience where you found that climbing wasn't just something you did, but it was so fundamental to you? It was such a core part of who you were.
Yes, I mean, I can do, because I would say, for me, there was a period in my life, 82, 83, where I was really interested in dangerous climbing. And if you said to me, what do you want to do in climbing? I would say, I want to do the most dangerous climb in the world. That's what I wanted to do. I was free soloing a lot and doing a lot of hard routes without ropes. And so I think if you're willing to put your life on the line, and I was, and if somebody said, you got a real chance of dying on this route, then I'd say, yes, this is what my life's come to, and I'm willing to risk my life to do that, because you get just so obsessed in a strange way. It's not normal. It's not advised. It's not a clever thing to do, but for some reason, you mentally, you just become so obsessed and blinkered. It's a crazy thing to do, but that was a period of my life where you look back on it now, and I think that was just bloody stupid. Why didn't you just, concentrate on doing harder routes or routes with ropes and stuff, or, but that was a part of my life where I look back on it, and I think I was obsessed. Yes, I was obsessed. I'm an obsessive person. Most of the things I do, I get very obsessed. I'm a perfectionist now, because climbing's not about being perfect. It's got nothing to do with being perfect. It's about trying really, really bloody hard and really giving it everything. And to do a lot of the climbs, you have to be obsessed, and you have to be you just have to give it everything. Sometimes the climb goes perfect, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes you can just pull it out the bag, and, that's the beauty of climbing. It's a beautiful thing, and, lots of things go wrong and you can do it. Sometimes everything goes right and you don't do it, That's climbing.
Absolutely. It is about the best climber one can be.
Yep.
One question I did want to bring up with you is, you were pushing the limits of free soloing,
Yep.
right? You were doing something which you now yourself think that might have been a bit too much, too extreme. You
Yep.
pushed the envelope on multiple occasions,
Yep.
and you likely had some close calls. I wanted to get your perspective on another free soloist of this generation. We're talking about Alex Honnold,
Yeah.
and I feel so many people opine on what makes Alex do the things he does. Like, is it his ability to conquer fear in a certain way? Is it his mental wiring that is so different? But somebody who was kind of similar for your time, Jerry, can you share your perspective on what drives and allows Alex to accomplish what he does?
I don't think Alex is doing anything different to what John Backer was doing, or to what I was doing, or to what Alan Robert was doing. It's just another person, and in 10 years' time, there'll be another person like him doing it just the same. One of the big differences is that he televises the stuff that he does, so a lot of people see it. So if nobody sees it on television or a podcast or a YouTube thing, it's not known, is it? But if you put it on a YouTube thing of you sowing a big root, everybody's going to go, wow, what's that? And thousands of people look at it. So the more people see it, and if it becomes mainstream and it becomes a film, lots of people look at it, and it seems incredible. But for me, Peter Croft, John Backer, stuff I did, Alan Robert in France soloed phenomenal things, phenomenal. Louis de Lazard, A-Ted Prost, when he did that, it's sick. It was way ahead of its game. Nothing in America was done that hard. We were soloing a lot harder than the stuff that was done over there for a long time. But it gets forgotten about because it wasn't filmed and it wasn't photographed. So if it ain't filmed or photographed, it doesn't get the publicity. But he's doing the same. So he's making a career out of it. But I personally don't think he's any different to what we were doing.
For sure. Let me ask you this question though. So, you and John Backer, Alan Robert, and
Peter Croft.
Honnold, Peter Croft.
Peter Croft, it was sick. It was ridiculous what he did. What a great guy. No publicity, he just wandered off. You just go, what have you done today? I've done the roster. And I love that. I love doing it and no publicity. You don't tell anybody, you just go do it. I think for me, that is the essence of it, And you can't say he did it for a photograph to get on the cover of a magazine or something like that. He didn't want any publicity, just went out there and did it. For me, a hero, what he did. Brilliant.
Yeah, there have been some interesting discussions between Honnold and Croft on their approaches, and it's kind of fascinating to hear two legends speak about that.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. So, again, in some ways, climbing is still not a mainstream sport. It's not like football or tennis. And within the world of climbing, free soloing is that much more niche. And I've done a tiny bit of free soloing. I did really easy stuff. I'm talking about like 5.5s, 5.6s, way below my long routes in the Alpine. Please help us understand, what is it about you and let's say this larger band of brothers in a way? What made you push yourself in free soloing? What did you get?
I think one of the things I should say how climbing has changed. So back in the early 80s and the late 70s, climbing was a dangerous sport. No, it was just dangerous. I didn't get the bolt for the first 2 years I went climbing. I never clipped a bolt. Everything was runners. It was felt to be a dangerous sport, and it was dangerous. So climbing without a rope was just that little bit more extreme. But every time you climbed, you were looking at taking big falls, and it was scary. I think as time's evolved, one of the biggest changes that I've seen in climbing is that it is now it's no longer considered a dangerous sport. It's just not dangerous, and it's almost unacceptable for it to be dangerous. And the thought of people climbing up to the first bolt and hitting the ground from 10 foot, people don't do it anymore. They stick it. They get a big stick and they clip it. Well, in my day, that was cheating. You couldn't do that. And if somebody said to you, but I don't want to fall and hit the ground, well, you said, well, that's climbing. You fall and you hit the ground. It's the same for everybody. So I think now there's it's just not an acceptance of there being any danger. which I'm not against that. I think that's fantastic. I think that's really good. I wouldn't want my children to that and do dangerous climbs. And it's more mainstream. It's just that the attitude has changed. I'm not saying it's worse. I'm just saying it's different. I like the attitude now, and it's great that it's a safe sport. No need to go out and risk your life and learn to say you're a climber. So I'm not saying it's one better than the other, but the thing is it's really changed, and it's not acceptable for nearly any sports to be dangerous now. And all sports are safe, aren't they? Or a lot safer. Even Formula One, I used to watch it. People, would occasionally get killed in Formula One. Now it's become really safe. And if there's anything they think you can make it safer, they'll make it safer. So that's one of the main things that's changed. And the whole attitude to life is different.
Absolutely. And I think maybe back then the lines were not so distinct. They were more blurred between what was rope climbing, what was bouldering, what was free soloing. Like, so much of the stuff you were doing, even if it was not free soloing, it was spatially protected.
Yes.
Where even if you were tied onto a rope, one mistake or one rock crumble.
Yeah. I've not just said, I would do a solo, and it might be the hardest solo that had ever been done in Britain, and it wouldn't even get written up in the magazines. Nothing would said. It would have no publicity.
Sure.
And if I did a boulder problem, and it was a new boulder problem on Whitstow, and it was the hardest boulder problem in the world, it wouldn't even have any publicity. Nothing. Because it was never publicised. It just wasn't. It was only climbing with ropes, and that was it. So there was no publicity on soloing, no publicity on bouldering. Even in the very first competitions, English magazines wouldn't publish competition results. I won some big competitions in France, and because the English climbers thought, competitions are not real climbing, they didn't publicise anything. So you had nothing. So you might win a massive competition, it would be in all the French magazines, but the English magazines wouldn't report it. So the whole thing's become very much more, I don't know, they publicise everything now, don't they? But the climbing's changed so much, it's ridiculous.
It is. What's funny is they publicize everything because the greater world seems to be quite intrigued by climbing, but they still get so many things wrong about the sport.
Yeah.
It's kind of comical on the outside.
Yeah.
Jerry, switching. So I started climbing a bit over 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
And of course, I devoured all the climbing literature that I could find. I loved your book.
Oh, thank you.
I loved your book. I read it about a dozen years ago.
Well.
And it transported me to those days. Growing up in Sheffield, or learning how to climb in that part of the world.
Yeah.
And the story writing, all of that, kudos to obviously to everything you brought, but maybe also to others who helped you.
Yeah.
Put out this tome together. And we don't have enough time to get into so many of your memorable stories from that time. But one thing I thought I would ask you is, you named the book Revelations after one of your iconic routes. Can you tell us why, if indeed the book was somewhat connected to that climb, can you tell us what was about that climb that was so important?
Well, it's a funny thing. It's a funny thing. When you write a book, you say you name it that. I can't even remember it Revelations. The publishers say, let's call it Revelations, and you go, okay, let's call it Revelations. I think it's in 5 of the different languages they had. I think one of the foreign languages said, we're going to call this book this. I'm like, I don't like that name. And they're like, too late, we've called it that. They called it Cragrat or something. But it is quite funny. So you really don't have you don't have a big say. Revelations was a big thing for me. I think it was it's given AB now. If it's AB, it was the first AB done in the world in 83 or something like that. And I call it Revelations because Revelations is the first chapter of the Bible, and it's the new beginning. So that was the whole point. It was the new beginning. Revelations. It's a new start. So that's why I called it Revelations. I think somebody else would have come up the name. I hardly, somebody nearly always went with my roommate. Somebody said, why don't you call it Revelations? I'm like, why? Well, because it's the new beginning. Okay, we'll call it Revelations. So I think somebody else came up with the name.
You know, what's funny is I interviewed Thomas Huber on the podcast sometime back.
Yeah.
And I was asking him about the naming of his book as well.
Yeah.
It's called, anyway. So I thought that the name had a deeper meaning, and he just pointed right back to the publisher again.
Yeah.
And said that the publisher.
Yeah, publisher gave it. Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So the book is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
I really recommend the book to climbers and also to anybody who's simply intrigued and fascinated about not just climbing as a sport, but about this journey that you and others in your circle undertook.
Yep.
And the love of the sport and the lifestyle that you embraced to be able to pursue your love to its apex. And I think that story is it's in so many ways transcends the sport.
Yeah.
And again, we'll put links on the show notes so people can go.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I should say when we wrote the book, I wanted it to document the history of my time and my generation. So you don't make money out of doing a book, but I wanted to do it for my children. I thought, let's document this time and tell people how it was, because it'll be forgotten if it's not in a book. And I wanted it to inspire people, and I wanted it to be fun. So I wanted it to be inspiring and to document the time and the history and stuff like that. And it's still the publisher's best-selling book, so it's done very well. But it's truthful. It just tells the history, and hopefully it puts over the fun. I mean, I've often said to some of the professional climbers when I see them, I'm like, you know what? You are living the life now. You are having the best time. It doesn't get better, because what you're doing now is an absolute bloody dream. And people go on about sacrifices in sport. There is no sacrifice, because I don't believe there's a better job than being a professional climber, traveling around the world climbing. If you love climbing, if you don't love climbing, it's not a very good job. But if you love climbing, you're in there. It's an absolute dream. It's a wonderful life.
And I will go on to say that there is no sacrifice. It is the best life, even if whether you are a professional climber traveling the world, putting up FAs and new grades, or even if you're an everyday.
Exactly. It's exactly the
getting
same.
out on the weekend.
Yeah, I don't think I enjoyed climbing more than thousands of other climbers. Thousands more. I didn't enjoy it any more. I enjoyed it 100%. But there's loads of other climbers who enjoy it 100%. So I can't say I got more out of it than other people. Just because you're doing the hard routes doesn't mean you're having, the most fun.
Jerry, I love that point about each of us can just have so much fun, irrespective of, again, those grades. Can you talk about that a little bit more, though?
Talking about the fun of it?
Yeah, talking about how this medium allows us to explore so many dimensions.
Yeah.
Starting with obviously the beautiful outdoors.
Yeah.
But also allows us to perhaps understand who we are.
Yeah.
And what we are capable of. And maybe even fight back against some limiting beliefs.
Yeah. Well,
and go on and achieve.
Yeah. For me, climbing is always about being fun. And it's not so much your competition, it's because it's a different environment. But when you're out on the crab and you're trying to do onsights or first ascents and stuff, sure, when you tie on the rope, that's when you get serious and you're stressed. But all before that, it's a lot of mucking around and laughing and stuff. And one of my best friends, Ron Kaup, in America, I climbed a lot with him, and we had such a laugh. And with Kurt Albert, Wolfgang, all those people, you have a real laugh, but then you tie on the rope and you go, right, Now you switch off and you're in the zone and you get serious. But it doesn't mean you walk around and you're serious the whole time. You have good mornings and good evening and out for a nice meal, and the whole thing is good fun. But then when you tie the rope on, I'm serious when I get into the climb. But it doesn't mean your whole life's serious. So the whole thing of it is just fun, traveling, hanging out with people. And when I look back on my career and the climbs that I did, I think about not so much the climb, but the period around the climb, the times when you're building up, trying to do it, working it, thinking about it, having a laugh, where you were hanging out, going out for the meals, going to the bars, women, all that stuff. That's what you like. And then you think, oh yeah, and the byproduct of that was I did a really good new route or repeated something.
I can't agree more. Like the sense, the sense and the red points, or the feats are important, but they would not be what they are if there were not all these other layers
Yes.
that enrich them. When you think back to all those decades of traveling the world, discovering all these things, places, Yosemite, like we said, or just the US and, France, and of course, Germany and the UK. Any standout memories or stories from those trips? Think back with like awe and even like laughter.
I think one of the funnest trips I had was when I went to Germany the first time in '83, and Wolfgang Kuhn was kind enough to give me a lift over. 5 of us jumped into this small Golf and drove through the night to the Franken-Jura. And then I think it was 2 weeks of the most incredible climbing. The weather was perfect. The trees were just turning. It was autumn. There was apples on the trees. At that time, I had no car. So when I was in England, I was hitchhiking to the cliff. They had a car, so I got a lift to the crad. That was amazing in itself. I had a house to stay in. I wasn't sleeping in some old barn, sleeping on the floor. So I had a house, I had a car, got driven around. Nearly every day they'd take me to some climb which had not been done. So I was doing new routes, repeating stuff. That was a real dream time. And Wolfgang, Gudick and Kurt Albert were so generous with their time. They didn't mind me doing new routes. So it was just a fantastic time, exciting. Back in those days, I think I was there 2 or 3 weeks. I don't think I ever saw another climber on the cliff. So back then, nobody else climbed, so you'd have the whole crowd to yourself. If there was somebody else there, it was like, oh my, like that. Now there's people everywhere, but if you saw somebody on the crowd there, you'd go up and you'd have a chat and go, hey, from what you're up to. But I don't even remember seeing any other climbers.
Sure.
And just after that, I had a magical time with Ben Moon. We hitchhiked down to the south of France, down to Buttes. And again, we had the first 2 weeks in Buttes, we never saw another climber. We had the whole cliff to ourselves. That's what it was like back then. So crowds were empty, and it was, a beautiful time. Lots of fun. Having a good laugh and everything, and everything was new.
You've had these lifelong partners and friendships with people like Ben and others. And these were strong bonds, but then sometimes also people with whom you competed fiercely, maybe going after the same thing sometimes. At the same time, these partnerships perhaps also brought out the best in you. Can you think of a couple of those instances where some of your climbing partners, again, who you were in some ways competing with, also pushed you and influenced perhaps your greater journey as an athlete?
Yeah, I would say I always got, I never didn't get, I got on with every single climber. So even if I was in a competition with them, I never had any enemies in climbing. It was always very friendly and respectful. Did other climbers push me? I was pretty self-motivated. If I was on a climb and somebody shouted up, come on, you can do it, nothing they could say would make me climb harder and pull harder than I'm trying to pull already. So nothing any other climber could do could make me try harder than I am. Having said that, if I was trying a boulder problem with somebody else and they nearly did it before I did it, then I would just pull a little bit, something, I don't know what happens, but you think, oh my God, he's going to do it before me. And I've had that plenty of times where you just pull it out the bag. I would say if anything was my forte, I'd say it was pulling it out the bag. You know, you shouldn't really do it. And then right at the end of the day, you think, oh my God, you know, I might be leaving. I've got to go back to England tomorrow. It's my last day. I've got to do it. I've got to do it then. Or you might be just not so much on routes, because when you do new routes, they're your routes. But certainly when you're bouldering and you're close to doing something, I can think of times where I've not done that one on problems. I've shown it to somebody, they've done quite well, and I thought, oh my God, they're going to beat me. And then you just get it, you find something, don't you? And you get a little bit more. But it was always a good friendly competition. I never had there was never a bad word in the climbing comps. Yeah, everybody got on with each other. But of course, you wanted to beat them and they wanted to beat you fiercely, which is great. It's not a bad thing, is it?
I love what you said, and two things I want to pick on. One I want to pick on is most of us, when we are climbing, I will say this for myself at least, I love having a partner who understands me well. So let's say they're bullying me or watching me. They know just when I'm struggling and I need just that extra boost. You know, they can say like, come on, or, you know, or Ale, or you know, vamos, depending on what part of the world you are. And I could just get an extra little bit of like wind underneath me to push me through the hard move. But it seemed like you had some level of self-belief or focus where perhaps, like you said, you did not. Do you think you like that?
I did. For me, when I was climbing, I didn't want nobody to say nothing, absolutely nothing. And I remember when I was in Yosemite and I did a boulder problem there called the Dominator, there was always 10 or 15 people watching, and I said, I don't want people watching, but please don't say anything when I'm climbing. I don't want anybody to say nothing. Because I'm on a bit of a move and somebody says something, ain't going to pull harder, I'm going to try harder. Nothing they can say is going to say to me, he's going to pull harder. So I didn't want to get put off. So I like to really keep it calm, have my own thoughts. It wouldn't help me at all. So I didn't like people saying anything.
Sure. You know what? You know, what the worst is when, sure, like I said, I like somebody, just a little bit of like subtle encouragement when I'm struggling.
Yeah.
But like the funniest or the worst is, you know, like when I'm at a jog resting.
Yeah.
And somebody's screaming their heart out.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you was, again, your performance on some of these, the focus and what you brought out on every single attempt. We spoke about Equinox, so let's just talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
There's a lot of backstory with this iconic route at Joshua Tree in the U.S. For its time, it was, and it's kind of still is. It's like a really nails kind of a crack climb, and like you said, it had people would project that route like for days, right?
Yeah.
And somehow you freaking went out there, put your shoes on, and you on-sighted.
Yeah.
Did that route first try.
Yeah.
Without knowing what the route was like, without any prior pre-inspection, Jerry, you on-sighted that route. So talk to us a little bit about both.
Yeah, I can tell you about the focus. Yeah, I can tell you how the mindset. So 6 months before, I met a guy called Randy Bogle, who had written the guidebook for Joshua Tree. He came to England. I was 19. I've not been to America yet. He'd never heard of me. I said to him, what about this route Equinox? I really want to go to Joshua Tree and try Equinox. And he said to me, he was a good friend of Bacchus, he said, forget it. There's no way you're going to do Equinox. He said, you cut your fingers to shreds. It took John Backer 3 days to top rope it. You've got no chance. That's what he said. So then I was like, I've really got to do this route. Back then, did I think it was not conceivable I'd have been happy if I'd done it in 2 days. But then when went to Joshua Tree, I was there for 3 months. I became a very good friend of John Backer, and I did a lot of climbing with John. He saw me climbing, and he was the one who gave me the idea to try and on-site it. Without him, I don't think I'd have tried to on-site it. But he said to me one day, you know what, I think you could on-site Equinox. So then I had it as a goal to on-site Equinox. So then I spent over a month just training to do Equinox. There's some boulder problems there with finger jams. So I'd be doing these boulder problems up and down and reversing them all on these finger jams. I was doing road ladders, traversing. I was eating a fantastic diet. I don't think in all my life, I don't think I've ever peaked for a climb better than when I did Equinox. I was so fired up. I was so fired up. It was before half friends were made. So the smallest size you could get was a number 1. John Backer lent me a half friend, so I had this one friend I could put in the crack. And I can remember leading it. I climbed up, reversed down, shook out. Then I went up a little bit more, put some wires in, got to a little shakeout. I remember thinking, shall I put the half friend in? I thought, no, I'll save it. And I was so psyched and so fired up. I just ran it out. But one nutted edge went. And I just went for it, ran it out. And I reckon if they'd stacked another Equinox on top, I think I'd have done that as well. And it felt pumped and absolutely, I absolutely cruised it. I pissed up it. I felt so good, but I was so psyched up and ready for it and so fit. I think I'd had 2 rest days before. On my rest days, I was doing probably 10, I was just climbing all down easy routes. So I'd do solely loads of 5s, 8s and 5 7s. So I was doing loads and loads of easy mileage. And then my training days, I was doing ladders, pull-ups, dead hands, traversing, bouldering, crack climbing. So it had, back then there wasn't anywhere to train better. It was before climbing walls and anything like that. So I was really, really fired up for that route. And it was, a big thing for me. And John was there with his camera. He documented it and got some great photos. So it was a special day to go there with John Backer and, have him take photos of you. It was really good, and he was very generous to encourage me to do that.
Jerry, was that one of those rare days you would break from tradition of, drinking tea and perhaps go to the local bar, Joshua Tree, and grab some pints?
No, I never drank alcohol. If I had money, I would have, but I never had the money. I never had the money to drink alcohol or go to a restaurant or anything. We were in such a huge dream. It was pre-sponsorship, pre-sponsored climbing. We absolutely had done a shoestring. But I never drank alcohol then. If somebody gave me a beer, I'd have had it. But then I can honestly remember never going to the shop and buying a can of beer. It was way too expensive. You wouldn't even have a meal in a restaurant. Yeah, well, you might have a coffee because it was free refills, and that was pretty incredible. But that was about it.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, no, so you put an incredible amount of really comprehensive preparation for this route. Like, you saw the route, you were inspired, you talked to others, it like lit this fire in you, and you put all this time at Joshua Tree preparing for it. When you went to the route, you were physically completely ready. At the same time, you also had the mental state to be able to execute.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that perhaps separates, let's say, the very, very top climbers from the rest of us, where, we do all of the same things, but then when we get to the climb itself, we may choke, right? We may get we in that balance between, let's say, focus versus expectation, we might like lose that balance. And maybe that's also something that you talk about in your newer book, Mastermind.
Yeah.
The whole mental.
Yeah.
So talk to us, Jerry, a little bit about the mental side of your preparation, where you would get to this route and you would do it. And I would also love for you to maybe compare, contrast, whatnot, with similar techniques that you've studied in other top climbers, such as, let's say, Adam Onra, master of onsighting and flashing. Like, what are these things that you guys have, and what can the rest of us learn from them?
I think when I went to Equinox, for one, John Backer told me he thought I could on-site it. So I've got somebody who says, I bet you can on-site that. So I know it's possible because John Backer's told me and he's done it. So then I can start to visualize it and think of myself on-siting it because he thinks it and he thinks that he can do it. So then I think it and then I thought about it. So when I was at the bottom of the route, I truly believed that I could on-site it. I didn't know whether I was or not, but I knew that I was in the best shape of my life. I knew that I had a good chance of doing it. So I was confident, and that confidence was instilled into me by John Backer and myself talking about myself on-siting it with John Backer, thinking about it and visualizing it. So we talked about on-siting it. I visualized it, and that instilled the confidence. So if you try to do something, I would say the more you talk about, think about, and write about something doing, the more likely you are to actually on-site it. And Adam Ondra is no different from all the other climbers. He's got it. He's a little bit different. He's got a really good attitude about being confident and just preparing things. He's confident and he thinks about things in the right way. I mean, if you get to the bottom of the route and you've got any doubt and you think you're not going to do it, it's going to be a lot harder to do it. So you really want to be visualizing things. I would say the one thing I learned from writing the book, you don't want to be optimistic. You want to be pessimistic. You want to be pessimistic about everything before you go to that route. Because if you're optimistic, you're going to think to yourself, oh, don't really need to train about that. Don't really need to think about that. Where's the crux? It doesn't really matter. I'll probably just probably just do it. You want to be pessimistic. So you want to go, where's the crux? I've got to find out where that is. What's going to happen if that goes wrong? What happens if that goes wrong? What happens if I have that pump there? These are all the things that you need to think about prior to going to the route. Being that pessimistic beforehand can lead you to being optimistic when you get there. So when you stand at the bottom of the route, you know, what happens if you get pumped? Well, my fitness is good and I can shake out anywhere and nobody's better than me in the world at shaking out. What happens if I read the route wrong? Well, that's probably not going to happen because nobody reads climbs better than me. What happens if my foot pops in one of the moves? Well, I know that my foot pops doesn't make any difference because I can remember that climb I did 2 weeks ago, my foot popped and I still did it. I know I'm ready for it and I've thought about everything and I know what how I'm going to deal with all those things. So I would say be pessimistic, think about all the things that could go wrong, how you will deal with those things going wrong when you're on an actual climb. So when you're at the bottom of that climb, you can go, I thought about everything that can go wrong and I know that I can deal with every single one of them and still do the climb. That's how you get to that position.
Got it. What I am following is that you would document, let's say, every doomsday scenario, like all the different things that could go wrong as you were trying for that route, and you would literally write it down, and then for each of those points, you would put into preparation.
Yeah.
On how. So I understand what you mean by the term pessimism. And then when you would actually get to the bottom of the route, you would know exactly what may happen and how you might get past it. And again, this is something that maybe in some way transcends all of life.
Yes.
The power of being able to plan for different scenarios. It's such a Such a powerful lesson. Along with that, you also write about visualization and self belief, which I find so compelling.
Yep.
Can you talk about how you developed those techniques and how they were helpful to you?
Well, I mean, think that everybody visualizes stuff. I mean, you visualize stuff from when you're almost from when you're born. I mean, it's like dreaming. You think about things. If you're thinking about something, you're visualizing it. You know, if I'm thinking about having my eggs for breakfast, I'm visualizing having my eggs for breakfast. So visualization, it becomes more useful when you're trying to do hard moves, because you're trying to remember all the moves. So visualization is really key on that. And certainly when you're trying a very hard red point and you're unable to do it, it's very hard to visualize going through the crux. But you have to visualize it. And I would say, one thing that I would do, I would say to people, if you visualize something, close your eyes, visualize it, and then I would say, how do you see it? How do you see it? Is it black and white? Is it a long or a way? Is it you climbing it? And I'd say, try and make it, turn it into colour, turn it HD, make it really bright, make it a sunny day so it's really visual, so it becomes more powerful. You want to see it in colour, and you want to see it really in front of you, and you want to turn the volume up. You want to hear volume, turn the volume up, turn on HD, and whack colour in it, because that will just make it a little bit more powerful. You want to make it as real as possible. But if you've not visualised or thought about it, when I learned that technique, somebody said to me, how are you visualising it? I said, is it colour? I don't know, black and white. Is there any noise? No, there's no noise. So I would say, turn it up, make it visual, make it colourful, put some noise in there, and make it as real as possible when you're doing the visualisation. So that's a little technique that I've just learned recently, which I think will help people. But you could talk about, there's so many techniques. I mean, you could do a whole podcast talking about visualization and different techniques to, when you've made mistakes, how to get them better and different ways of doing things. There's a lot of really incredible stuff that I've just been doing recently. But it's too long to talk about it now.
Yeah, no, for sure. Maybe we can have you back on the podcast sometime and do a deep dive, because I certainly think that this is one of those overlooked skills. I actually had a bouldering coach a few years ago. I was trying to get better at certain things. And one of the simplest things he would ask me to do is, every time before I started on a boulder problem, if I could visualize myself doing all of the moves from the bottom to the top.
Yeah.
And then again from top to the bottom. And I realized that I did not do that very consistently. So it's one of those things that I'm still working on it and trying to drill down. Some of those things.
I just add to that, doing colour, and then after you've visualised it and you've seen the whole thing, you want a final thought. You want to have one final thought going into the problem or the route or something. That is it. That's a concentration thing. So your conscious mind can think about lots of different things. If it thinks about one thing, it's concentrating better. So the less things you're thinking about consciously, the more you're concentrating. So ideally, you want to think about one thing. So if you've never climbed before, and I tie you onto the rope, you're going to be thinking, oh, has he tied the knot properly? Is it going to hurt when I fall off? Am I going to look stupid? Where do I put my feet? If you've been climbing for 10 years, you're not going to think, has he tied the knot right? You're not going to think, is he going to hurt? You're not going to think, am I going to look stupid? You know where your feet are going to go. And as you get better and better, you really, when you try something really hard, you really want to concentrate on one thing. And if you've not been giving it everything or something, your final thought might be, right, focused aggression, be really aggressive on this route. That was nearly always my final thought. Focused aggression. Be focused and aggression. Not panicking, not rushing, but just really focused and aggressive. And for climbing, you need to be aggressive. So I'd say the visualization, You do that, and then you want to find the thought. How are you going to do the climb? You can't halfway through the climb have a final thought. I mean, it's too late. You have to make your mind up on the bottom before you put on the rock. If you're scared of taking a fall on it and hurting yourself, or make your mind up before and say, I don't care what happens. I'm going for it, no matter what. I am going to run it out to the next bowl. That is it. That's my decision on the ground. Tie the rope on it out. That's what I'm going to do. It's too late when you're halfway up the climb. So if you think about where the problem is on the climb, what you're trying to do, think about that and go, that's my final thought. That's my goal on this climb. On that third bolt where I've been struggling to get that hold properly with my right hand with 3 fingers in a crimp, that's what I'm going to do. That's my final thought. Whatever happens, I don't get that. Anything else on the climb, when I get to that third bolt, I'm going to get that all perfectly with 3 fingers. And the rest of the climb will take care of itself. Focused aggression, third bolt, 3 fingers, crimp that. So you want to have one thought and go, that's it. Climb is an unconscious sport, so you do all the moves to get up there. But you just want to think about that one thing.
That focused aggression is also so valid because, again, something that can happen is you might go get to that 3 finger, 3 finger crimp.
Yeah.
And something might happen, right? Like, I don't know, like there could be a bird that flies behind
Yeah.
you, or maybe your foot might
Pop.
cut accidentally. Yeah. And what you're saying is like you got to get into that mind state that no matter what happens, I am not giving up. Like, I have to just keep trying until I cannot try anymore.
Yeah.
One thing, Jerry, that again I think you can coach us on is the ability to focus on one thing. I think that seems simple, but it's such a difficult skill. There is this thing that I love to always point to is that my ability to, or my lack of ability to quieten the monkey mind, not just in climbing, but in other parts of my life, again, because that focus is so vital. So any other techniques that you found to be helpful to you and others on being able to kind of build that muscle where when it really comes to it, one can quieten the monkey mind and just focus on the task at hand?
It's a tough one, really. I mean, for me, I think your conscious mind can only think about a certain amount of things. So if it's thinking on one thing, which is positive, and that final thought, that's called a process goal. So if you're thinking about one thing, that's a process goal. That's the most concentrated you can be. So you want to just think on that, on the process goal. And if you're thinking about that, it's very hard to think about the negative stuff as well. So a lot of the techniques, but also the mental stuff, is picking a process goal, picking what is the one most important thing I have to do to get up that climb. And if you're by yourself bouldering, a very good technique is just take yourself out into the third party, you yourself, think of a third party, and that third party is looking at you. What would that person say who's watching you? So imagine there's a coach there, imagine Adam Monber or somebody like that's on the hill, Jacob, somebody like that, and he's watching you and thinks, what would he say now? What would he say? I think he'd probably say, stop mucking around, make sure your foot sticks on that foothold, because he's popping every time, So right, fair enough. That's my process goal. I'm going to make sure my foot sticks on that thing. So that's a good way of doing it. Take yourself out of it. Imagine you've got a coach there, look at you, what would he say? And then think, right, that's what I'd do. As to techniques to quieten your mind down, I mean, they're quite, I'm quite into meditation. I meditate every day, not that long, for 10 or 20 minutes, and I find it really helpful. it's 10 minutes of nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing that's gone before. It's nothing that's gone behind. It's just sexual. It's just, all I do is concentrate on my breathing, my in-breath and my out-breath. I can't do 10 minutes without my mind wandering off to something else, but there's no judgment. I just back to breath, back to breath, back to breath. And that's the tried and tested proven way of just entering your mind. And I love it. So I've been doing that for a couple of months now. And I'd like to think I'd like to go it forever, really. It's a real beautiful time where you just relax your mind. And if I'd have known it when I was climbing, I'd have done a lot of meditation, because it just takes everything out of it, blanks your mind out, and just calms everything right down. And I wish I'd used it earlier. So I'm enjoying doing that. That's one of the hobbies I have now, is I've done a course on meditation.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. I also started a breathwork and meditation practice a year ago.
The way? Oh, cool.
And I'm still working. Yeah, I'm still working through it, and there are days when I falter. And some days I feel I have found that kind of forever focus thing. And some days I feel that I really botched it. But I think one of the goals of at least this practice that I'm doing is to not judge myself.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, no judgment. You can't do it, bro. There's no judgment on it. You don't win a meditation. You meditate. Sometimes your mind goes and it keeps wandering off. I find that it wanders off for the first few minutes, and then towards the end of it, you can get more centralized and start to blank things out.
Sure. And they say that the more, let's say, your mind wants to wander, the more important it might be for that person to build that practice.
Yeah.
Because that person probably needs it more than...
Yeah, they say every time that wanders is mindfulness. It's mindfulness when your mind wanders, because you know that your mind's wandering. So it's mindfulness. So there's not a...
That's a good point.
You're aware that it's wandering. So
Yeah.
That's what they call mindfulness.
Yeah. That is so true. Like, just the fact that one can recognize that one's mind has gone somewhere else is in itself like a little, I don't know, token of success.
You're aware of its mindfulness, because you're aware that your mind's wandering. Yeah.
Another thing that you speak of, Jerry, in your book is, let's say, on clarity of mind. And you speak about this this story where you did not do as well in a climbing comp.
Yep.
Because you had overheard, let's say, a limiting conversation.
Yes.
Which which maybe planted some seeds of doubt.
Yes.
Right? Can you talk about what that was?
Yeah.
And again, can you talk about how we can maybe again cultivate that place for ourselves where we focus on what's important and shut off all other noises?
Yeah, but that was in a climbing competition back then. One of the rules was, it wasn't how high you climbed, but it was how high you touched. So now, if you grab a hold, that's your high point. If you touch a blank wall above it, that's no high, but this is no hold there. But this was back in early climbing competitions, and they just said the highest you touched. So what some people would do was climb up, and when they felt they were going to fall off, they'd just jump up and slap as high as they could and touch the wall. That to me was cheating, so I never did it. I never ever did a climbing competition, ever slapped to get distance, because I thought, well, that's not climbing. But I overheard these two climbers talking about how they, instead of doing the traverse and doing 3 moves, they went to the left. They didn't think they could do the traverse, and they just jumped up and slapped high. So they got distance, and they're having this big argument and stuff. And I remember hearing it, and then I thought, why am I listening to this? Because it's just making me thinking of jumping. And I don't jump anyway. Then I got to the climb. I got pumped. It was nowhere near the traverse. It was about, that was the semi-final. I was in the final. I got to the thing, and I was pumped. And I could see this hold above me. And I suddenly thought about that conversation I thought about jumping, and I hesitated, and I went, jump. Oh, I never jump. But that hesitation just stopped me, and I reached for the hole. I kind of stuck it for a millisecond, but didn't stick it. And that was it. I was there was two joint leaders. They didn't have it was me, Jackie Glover. We got to exactly the same place. If I had stuck the hole, I'd have won the competition. They didn't have another route, so we just had to do the climb again. I had about 5 minutes rest. I had no rest at all. Jackie was one of the earlier climbers. I think he'd had about half an hour rest. And I just climbed up and I got pucked straight away because I hadn't rested, and he won the competition. But I'm absolutely sure, if I hadn't heard that conversation, that I wouldn't have even thought slapping, because I never did anyway. So that was just an example of being very careful of what you're listening to, who you're talking to. You don't want to be around negative people. You want to be around good time people. You don't want to be talking about, you didn't do well there. You want to be encouraging people. You climbed great. You want to be around people who said, they really enjoyed that comp. You want to be around positivity rather than negativity. I guess that's obvious.
Yeah. I think this is like one of those keystone principles of life in a way, where I go back and, we have our moms telling us to surround ourselves with people, let's say, who are better than we are in some ways. Or another expression somebody's told me, I keep with me, which I heard when I was a kid, was, you become the average of the 4 people. This is one of those keystone principles about surrounding ourselves with positivity. And perhaps, what my mom told me when I was, a little young one, which was surround yourself with people who are in many ways better than we are, people who have qualities we aspire to.
Yeah.
And if just one practices that reflects back and gives back in just everything that we do. So, note to self is, don't be a peeping Tom, or don't be a nosy Parker. Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Stay where one's focus is, and let the rest. Actually, one of the last things I'll talk about in this great book of yours is you talk about this concept of choking.
Yeah.
Right? Again, you have planned for this big goal in life.
Yeah.
Right? It could be a climb. It could be, I don't know, it could be that time, you are out in the mental-wise trying to catch that perfect barrel, right?
Yeah.
You have everything lined up.
Yeah.
And then, a lot of us can choke sometimes. And one funny analogy I like to also think about is, I grew up in a cricket-loving country.
Yeah.
And I think you did as well, to some degree.
I love cricket. I love my cricket. Love it. I love cricket.
And, we used to joke when we were a kid that the Indian team would lose so often that we would joke that the Indian team would often snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would be so close to winning, and they would somehow stab themselves.
Yeah.
So can you also talk about how to prevent that? Is there anything else you can share on how to carry that all the way to the end?
When I wrote Mastermind, I did it with one of the best sports psychologists in the country, Lou Hardy. He ran the Olympic. He was head of Olympic psychology for 10 years in Britain. He actually did the English cricket team. He coached then. And I asked him, what can you do to stop choking? And he said, nothing. 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 There is nothing that you can do. You can't, it happens. And there is no formula for anybody to go, I'm never going to choke again. It just happens. And I remember when I interviewed Chris Sharma, and we were talking about, he proudly told me, I choked loads of times. I choked loads of times. He proudly told me, everybody does it. It's something, it just happens. But there is no, and that's him saying it. He goes, that's it. Finish that one now. There is no formula for that. Just choking happens. Funny, I've got tickets to see India. I'm going to watch them this year when they come over to play England. I've got tickets
Nice.
I think I'm going to Headingley Trap Bridge. Can't wait.
Oh man, that sounds special. I stopped following cricket as avidly when I moved to the States.
Oh yeah,
College.
it's the end there, isn't it?
One other thing I want to talk about is finding balance. Okay, so I think you've touched on it in your writing. You've touched on about things such as between ambition and rest, and then you've talked about again the balance between physical and mental, and then you've also talked about how you accomplished so much in your climbing career that you wanted to balance that out with perhaps other things. So can you also maybe just share your philosophy on balance, on what it takes to create this all-round balanced life?
Oh, well, for me, I wanted to have the balance. So I wanted to do. You kind of want to do it all. I wanted to do everything. I wanted to have a family. I wanted to be a climber. I felt I'd done that, but I wanted to move on and do other things. And when I was climbing, because I'm an obsessive person, it wouldn't allow me to do anything else really. And I found it really hard for the first 2 years when I stopped climbing. Honestly, nearly every day I felt guilty because I wasn't climbing. And I had this, it's like an addiction. You think, oh, I should be training today. And you're thinking, well, no, I shouldn't have been doing that. 42, I'm 45, I should be training. But you have this real thing, it's in the back of your head, you think, you should be climbing, you should be doing that, Well, why should you? I wanted to do other things. So I really I played a lot of golf. That was when I was climbing. And then when I finished climbing, I've always loved surfing. And surfing is not, it doesn't really work with climbing. Because if you have a rest day from climbing and then you go surfing the next day, you're even more knackered than when you stop climbing. So you're just tired out. So I really got into surfing, and it's a very similar lifestyle to climbing, traveling all around the world. I went to lots of different places to surf, and I really enjoyed that for a long time. And then unfortunately, I think it was about 4 years ago, I broke my neck in Lanzarote, surfing on a beach break. Not a very big wave, it was a small wave, quite hollow, very shallow. I took off, trying to tuck into a tiny little barrel. I got stuck on the top of the wave, lifted up and drilled straight down head first, and broke my 7th vertebrae. So I've got 2 rods in my back with 6 screws holding it all together. And it was a pretty traumatic time. I spent a long time in hospital, big operation, neck brace. When the neck brace came off, I could walk, but I couldn't walk without a lot of pain. So it took me a long time to just learn to walk again with my back, and then a massive rehab. So it was a pretty life-changing thing, really. So now I don't do surf. I don't do nothing dangerous. I don't even drive fast in the car. I'm just like, I wouldn't go on a push bike. I'm that nervous about going back to hospital. So that was a big life-changing thing. And I still would surf, but I just don't want to go back to hospital. And I was in a lot of pain. All I can remember is pain. I had a lot of pain in my elbow from a compressed nerve. So it's excruciating pain all in my left arm. And the doctor said to my wife, your husband's very, very lucky he wasn't paralysed. It was really close. It was really close, and it shakes you up quite a bit. So that was the end of my surfing career.
Gosh, no, that sounds positively insane, Jerry. I mean, awful that happened, but also maybe somewhat fortunate that it didn't.
Oh man, he was blessed.
It wasn't worse.
Yeah, I was blessed. I mean, you never see yourself in a wheelchair when in your whole life. You never think, oh, one day I could be paralysed. But it was a real reality for me that I was close to being paralysed, and it was an emergency helicopter ride to a hospital for an operation and all that stuff. But so I was very lucky, and I do think about it now when I see people in a wheelchair, and I think, that could have been me. It could have been me. So I was very lucky, really.
Well, it must have been a particularly shallow sandbar.
Yeah.
And I mostly surf, or I've learned to surf around beach breaks around San Francisco. And the surf here can often be very rough and big, and it's kind of a pretty temperamental and kind of a big open beach break.
Yeah.
And I like to think that in some ways, yes, you could drown if you're very careless, or you could get. I always, one is always getting pummeled, but I think that in some ways it is safer.
Yes.
Because
you're not going to hit the bottom, are you?
Break as compared to like sharp, live coral jutting out or all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But do you think that it is ironic, Jerry, in some ways that you did so much, let's say, like you said, dangerous climbing.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know what was the worst that ever happened to you, but sounds like this accident from surfing, which a lot of people think, surfing is la-di-da-di-da, is what...
Oh, yeah, it was... the ironic thing was, it was the shittiest little wave, the crappiest little beach. It was nothing. I've surfed some really scary big reef breaks, and I've, 5 trips to window on boats. I've surfed all over the world, and some big scary stuff. This thing was just not concentrating, small, shitty little beach, just so blasé about it. Nothing waved a flag of like, you're going to get really hurt here. Nothing, absolutely nothing. But accidents happen, don't they? And it was that blasé, optimistic, nothing's going to go wrong here. When it is dangerous, or everything's alert, but all the little everything's, all the senses are going on, man.
What is funny is I think there is also this little other like truth to situations which are objectively scary that we are well prepared for. So whether it's like again like a really scary, hollow, shallow surf break, or it's a dangerous free solo, one may not get injured there, but people will fall and break their ankles, legs, or worse, decking 10 feet off the ground.
Yeah, well, the scenario is, it was equivalent of doing a really hard solo and then walking down and tripping on a boulder and then breaking your wrist as you're walking back to the car. This thing was so unaerobic, so small, so nothing. It was, it was like falling backwards, putting your wetsuit boots on and smacking your head and knocking yourself out. Is as stupid as that, really. It's pretty crazy.
Sure.
And that's when a lot of accidents happen, don't they?
One thing I just came to my mind, I thought I would ask you is, in this podcast, we also celebrate people who have picked up an activities, a sport later in life and excelled, right? And I think you didn't really start putting yourself fully into surfing until you were moving out of climbing.
Yeah.
But given the fact that you were trying to tuck into small barrels, sounds like you got kind of good at it.
I could get barreled and stuff. Let me tell you, I wasn't very good at surfing. I got barreled. I could do doctors, cutbacks, and I could, I had some really nice barrels in my life, and that was special. But I would not profess to be a good surfer in any way, shape, or form. It took me 3 or 4 years to get my first barrel. Getting barrels bloody hard, though. It's really hard. But I surfed a lot, so I was older and I surfed a lot. But I certainly wasn't. Sure. You would watch a load of almost better than average. But if you're in Indo on a really good wave, I was normally with the best surfer and I was the worst. So I surfed a lot with a guy who was the British champion, and I was always with really good surfers. So I'd always be the best person paddling out, and I'd always be the worst one. I associated myself with good people and had a lot of help, and I loved it. And they do say the best surfer is the one who's enjoying it the most. And I did enjoy it.
I think it's also part of getting older that in some ways one can be more planned and almost strategic.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of bad sessions because, again, the place where I surf, the surf is often very junky. But now I am also a bit more planned with my time. And when I choose to go surf, which is like, like going on a boat trip offshore somewhere in Indo and finding this perfect, maybe emptier mechanical reef break.
Yeah.
Right. And then finding like the company of some experts.
Yeah.
To kind of encourage and call you into that wave. I think, I mean, again, like, as you get older, time is limited. Be smart. How one approaches anything in life. One last thing I want to talk to you about, which I kind of forgot earlier, Jerry, is I saw this super cool video of you and Ben and Adam Ondra and Magnus Midbo, kind of like the old guard, and the young bucks, like this thing. And initially, I was a little bit surprised that maybe I did not actually see you climbing much in that video, and now it makes sense that perhaps you were injured, and you are now more careful about your climbing.
It was after I broke my neck, so I'd just broken my neck.
Oh gosh. Towards the end of that video, we have you and your group go out climbing, and I think there's that one scene where I think Adam, he sends or maybe even flashes one of your highlight ascents.
Yes.
Can you speak to that, Jerry? What that moment was?
It was one of the last. It was one of the last boulder problems I did, called the Ace on Stanage. It's a beautiful, very short 1, 2, 3, 4 move boulder problem, 5 moves. Beautiful problem right on the top of the plantation. So all the bouldering comes down below you. So it sits right on the top of the hill. So you can see it from everywhere. It's just a beautiful boulder that stands out. It was my final hurrah, really, one of the last hard problems I did up there. It was a project. I've been trying it the wrong way, and then I found an easy sequence which somebody told me about. Once I found that, I did it relatively quickly. Then Adam came over. It was a famous problem, and he had the idea to try and flash it. So there's a boulder there. You can stand on that. You can feel the holds. You can touch all the holes before you pull on. But so he sat there and watched some other people try it for about half an hour. Then he was touching all the holes, feeling it, wondering which way he was going to try it. It was a beautiful day. There was a load of people on the cliff. There was loads of people down on the bottom. There must have been 30 or people. And even it's different from a lot of countries. People will pretend not to watch, but they'll watch. Whereas you go to other countries and you're really like, hey, now, can we watch? But they don't do that here. They watch and pretend they're not watching. Right. It was quite funny. And then he just pulled on, and it's a short problem. So you pull on and you do it in, a split second. So he's on the bottom. He pulls on, sends it. It was fantastic to see. And Adam's a lovely, lovely bloke. He's a really nice, modest. He's a good friend. He's a super nice guy. So it was great to watch him do that. I'm really happy for him.
He accomplished this incredible boulder problem, did it first go. And you were right there with him, supporting his ascent, maybe the same way John Backer supported you, back in that day, back in those days on a Joshua Tree. And I'm curious if you also have some perspective, having observed him, on what makes Adam that special in climbing.
It's just another generation. It's just another generation. It's just another generation and another special climber. Then that front, they're all special, aren't they? Bradford, Joe Brown, Doug Willens. Plus, it's just another generation. In 20 years' time, there'll be somebody else and they'll go, what makes him special? And Adam will be there going, God, wow, what makes him special? He's no different from any of the other. No different at all from any other athletes in Federer, Tiger Woods. Oh, there's tons of special people out there, aren't there? What makes them special? Desire. 100%. It's desire. You got to have the genetics, and then you've got to have desire. You've got to have an unbelievable desire and drive, and that inner drive, unquestionably. If you don't have that, you're never gonna get there. And it's got to be a little bit of a screw missing in your head or something like that to give you that. You know what I mean? And it's not a normal thing. It's not normal. It's not normal to have that drive. Something weird's happened in your life to make you want to go that hard. So one, you've got to have the genetics, and two, you've got to have the drive. But the driver every single time. You need that drive.
It is some kind of freakish ability to have that desire and be able to channel it. But you're right about Adam. Again, I don't know him personally, but he also seems like such a balanced, nice person, like you said earlier. And sometimes I feel like it's so amazing that we have these beacons of a sport, who are able to perform at that level, but then also be such great ambassadors. Coming to the end of this conversation, Jerry, do you have any insights or any last tips for listeners on how to stay ageless?
Ageless.
Any perspective there?
Well, the one thing that's right at the end, and this is really important, when I asked, and I knew the answer before I said it, I asked all the top climbers the question: what mindset are you in when you climb at your best? What mindset are you in? And every single one of them had the same answer, and the answer was, I was having fun and enjoying it. So I would say the mindset you want to be in is having fun and enjoying it, and you want to carry that through for your life. You want to try and have fun and enjoy it, and you've just got to try and find ways to have fun and enjoy things. And if you do that, you'll perform well, and everything should flow a lot better. So that's and I knew that'd be the answer, because that everybody says the same thing, and everybody thought that they were saying something original, like, actually, I was just having fun. They thought there's some special ingredient. There's not. You've got to enjoy it.
Yeah, I don't think this is like there's. I was not expecting like a silver bullet answer. But I think it is who it comes from and how it is delivered, and also that certain bit of reinforcement that I think all of us need. That when we do have self-doubt, when we do hit maybe some plateaus, it is again maybe going back to that earlier love, because climbing again, like, it's not making anybody that much richer. You might get to have a drink with England's best cricketer, but beyond that, there isn't
but I would say try to have fun. You're not always going to have fun. No, I didn't always have fun, but sometimes you can realize and say, this is not going well today. I'm not feeling good. I'm not enjoying it. Pack up, go home, forget it, come back the next day. You know what I mean? It doesn't always go, I'm having fun today and doing great. It just doesn't go like that. And realise it and go, sometimes you just got to go, it ain't going right, pack it, go home. You're not going to achieve anything. Easy said than done. But you're not going to enjoy every day. But that's your goal, to try and have fun.
You have accomplished so much in the world of climbing, and may I say, even beyond. And, I had Ben Moon on the podcast recently, and your name came up, of course, and Ben was saying that Jerry is just great. He's just good at everything he takes.
I don't know about that.
And to the outside world, it seems that you have done well with so many things. Are there some things yourself that you wish you were better at?
I would say I was good at climbing, and I'm okay at other things. But of course, I've not been that great at other things. And I would say it's really hard to pick up other sports and be really good at them later in life. But I was a good climber. I'd leave it at that. I did okay other things, but nothing amazing.
It's been a treat having you on the podcast.
Yeah, pleasure. I've enjoyed
Thank you so
it.
much for coming on, Jerry.
I'm going for a beer now.
That's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Ageless Athlete podcast. I hope you enjoyed this show just as much as I enjoyed creating and producing it. Whether you are an athlete looking to push your limits or someone striving to maintain a healthy, active lifestyle as you age, there is always something new to learn. From Ageless Athlete, we bring you a fresh episode each and every week. If you liked what you heard, we would love it if you would take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an update. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a review, crush those 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. It helps us reach more people who are passionate about staying strong and resilient, no matter their age. Don't forget to visit our website and leave your email so I can send you occasional insights, stories, and tips to keep you inspired and motivated on your journey. You can also follow us on Instagram at Ageless Athlete Podcast and on YouTube at Ageless Athlete Podcast as well for even more great content. All of these links are available on the show notes for this episode. This show is entirely produced by me, Kush Khandelwal, based out of California with the help of my trusted adventure pup Roger. Until next time, keep challenging yourself. Keep pushing those limits. Stay mentally and physically fit. Continue doing what you love to do. And my friends, stay ageless.